France has become the first country in the world to explicitly include the right to abortion in its constitution in a far-reaching move championing my body, my right. Parliamentarians voted to revise the country's 1958 constitution to enshrine women's guaranteed freedom to abort. The historic move was proposed by President Emmanuel Macron as a way to prevent the kind of rollback of abortion rights which have just been seen in the United States in recent years. In 2022, the vote during a special joint session of Parliament drew a long-standing ovation among the lawmakers.
L'ordre du jour appelle le vote sur le projet de loi constitutionnelle relatif à la liberté de recourir à l'interruption volontaire de grossesse. Pour la première fois de notre histoire, le Congrès du Parlement est présidé par une femme.
History in the making in the French Parliament. France has become the world's first nation to enshrine the right to abortion in its constitution. It is the only country in the world to explicitly guarantee a woman's right to voluntarily terminate a pregnancy.
Nombre de votants, 902. Nombre de suffrages exprimés, 852. Majorité requise pour l'adoption du projet de loi constitutionnel, soit les 3/5 des suffrages exprimés, 512. Pour l'adoption, 780. Contre, 72.
The historic move was proposed by French President Emmanuel Macron as a way to prevent the kind of rollback of abortion rights seen in the United States in recent years.
For us, it's a fundamental right, and it has to be in the Constitution because you can always change the law, and we have seen it with the United States, but also in other European countries. So yes, it's a step forward.
Et qu'on se sent reconnu et davantage protégé aussi grâce à ça. Je pense que c'est aussi un bon signal envoyé aux autres pays de dire qu'on peut toujours progresser davantage dans ce droit-là pour lequel on se bat depuis des décennies.
Women have had the legal right to abortion in France since 1974. 50 years later, it is a constitutional right in France. After liberty, equality, fraternity becoming a part of the French Constitution in 1958, this perhaps is another French constitutional landmark for the world to follow. With Srishti Shankar, Bureau Report, NDTV.
All right, to talk more about this move by France and its significance, we're now joined by Zakia Soman, activist and member of the Bharatiya Muslim Mahila Andolan, Flavia Agnes, women's rights lawyer, and Dr. Archana Dhawan Bajaj, women activist and gynecologist. Flavia Agnes, first to you, your comments on this move by France, my body, my right, and also to enshrine it in the Constitution so there can never be a rollback like what was seen in the United States in 2022.
I think it's a great move ahead. And though France is a Catholic country, there's hardly any protest. And everybody is supporting this. And I think that's remarkable. And it's the first country, it's revolutionary because it is the first country to make abortion a constitutional right. So there cannot be a rollback on that as we've seen in the US. So this makes the right very, very strong. And on the eve of Women's Day, I think it's a great achievement for women in France. I think it's wonderful that they have done this. And every country has struggled. Women in every country have struggled to make abortion, legal abortion possible for women to save their lives. And I think France has gone ahead and made it an absolute constitutional right.
Right, ma'am, absolutely. An incredible day for, women's rights and a very positive message, I think, to other countries as well. Fortunately, in India, it's not as controversial an issue as it is in the United States. But Zakia Soman, first, your comments on this.
So I think it's a historical move. And your wording that is the new French Revolution to describe this is a very, very apt wording. I think it will have long-lasting impact, not just in France and in Europe, but for women all over the world. because this gives it's like equivalent to the fundamental right to women to right over her body, over her reproductive organs, and nobody can intervene. No jurisdiction, no judiciary, no institution, no police, no government can take that away from her. So it has been made part of the basic law, and the woman only and she only herself can decide whether she wants an abortion or not. So it's a very, very good development. I think world over we are seeing lot of onslaught on women's equality, on women's rights, lot of forces of conservatism and patriarchy who want to take away rights from women. So this is like a befitting response to all of them. And France, if we look at its history, the French Revolution and the values of liberty, equality, and fraternity, France is more suited to take it forward. And I think they have done that. And lawmakers all over the world need to learn from this and take inspiration from this. How women who are equal human beings become equal legally speaking, constitutionally speaking. That is something that everybody can learn from France, and it's a very, very welcome move.
Absolutely, a very welcome move on the eve of Women's Day. Dr. Archana Bajaj, your comments on this, and also about the laws here in India, which are seen as fairly progressive.
Absolutely, I think laws in India are fairly progressive, but what a crown to women's emancipation this has been. It has been. I think it's going to go down in French history as like a pre-Macron and a post-Macron era. So progressive and so brilliant, because European Union itself has both extremes. It has countries which make abortions legal up to 24 weeks, and then it has countries like Spain where healthcare providers have been refusing abortion to women on religious grounds and motivated by religious sentiment. So it's like a move that would probably, get a lot of people to think and to think right. And more than that, I think what's really, really very important, that no amount of legal, no amount of emotional, no amount of religious intervention can roll this back. So for those women in the world, thankfully, which doesn't include our country, who have this fear that this could, any day be rolled back, are going to be away from the fear A. And of course, there will be countries which will follow this soon. And I'm sure this is going to be like something that all of us are going to learn from, and all of us are going to be able to respect not only the abortion law, it's just all about respecting women and womanhood altogether. And I don't think there can be a bigger way to say that we respect women than giving them a complete right and penning it down in the Constitution. What a moment.
Absolutely. And Flavia, Agnes, when the US in 2022 retreated on this right for women, it was a shock across the world. In fact, I remember, people everywhere getting very emotional. And since then, one has been seeing the kind of struggle women in the United States, in various states there, have been going through.
Yeah, absolutely. And particularly poor women, black women, etc., have been suffering because they are denied the right to abortion. Funding for the abortion clinics has been stopped, and they don't know where to go. And they have to go to another country like Mexico or something to get their abortions done. And that's really expensive for them. And that has curtailed their right. And it is very shocking that the progressive judgment of Roe versus Wade was reversed in 2022 and made it absolutely impossible, or rather constrained their right to abortion. So this according to me, sends a right message across the world that my body, my choice. I have right over my body, and a government or a healthcare provider cannot decide whether I should have an abortion or not. So I think the right is much further advanced in France through this than it is in India. So in India also we have the right. Right now we don't have a fear of a rollback. But even so, this issue has been controversial even in India. So I think it's a very good signal and sends the right message across the world to all the legislators.
That's right. Zakia Soman, in 2022 in India as well, we had abortion rights for irrespective of marital status. So that was a very welcome change that we saw then. And all women entitled to a safe and legal abortion is what the top court had ruled. So even though, there are some issues here and there, overall, we have very progressive laws, for women. And fortunately, in terms of religion, etc., it's not a big issue over here.
Yeah, exactly. So we have been advancing very systematically and very surely towards women's rights. But Gargi, I'm sorry to say, from time to time, we get, very controversial kind of observations and sometimes even rulings from various, courts. And, the fear is also from certain political forces who fundamentally have a very misogynist and patriarchal worldview, and who would not like, if left to themselves, would not like to give equal rights to women. So that creates a kind of a tension in our society from time to time. But yes, Indian women have all the rights to abortion, and those rights are legally upheld. And various courts of law have also sort of supported women's autonomy over their bodies. But it's always good to have laws which, which sort of make the writing, it's like, making the writing more permanent, and sort of weeding out any possibilities of arbitrary interference in women's rights. Because we remain at the end of it all, we remain in India and in South Asia, particularly, we remain a patriarchal society where there are dominant discourses which, would give very little autonomy and very little sort of equality to women. And, those forces have been raising their head from time to time. We cannot overlook that. So it's always good when a legal advance happens, which furthers women's autonomy. So in that sense, yes, we are lucky, but France would be an example to emulate for everybody. I'm sure about
right,
that.
absolutely. Enshrined in the constitution, no longer subject to sort of, opinions of men or politicians who may come in. And that must be such a safe feeling for the women of France. And what a fantastic message, as all of us have been saying, ahead of Women's Day. Dr. Archana Bajaj, if this whole issue of why it's such a huge deal in the United States, sometimes, people can't understand why it, the anti-abortion groups. Of course, the Vatican too has not welcomed what France has done. There's this whole argument in Christianity about when, the life begins, and that is, the main issue why this is such a controversial, remains such a controversial subject.
Various religious groups do have they feel that doing an abortion is equivalent to killing a life. But end of the day, we have to realize that killing a life in utero versus killing a life ex utero, that is something, which is a completely different tangent. And secondly, as a woman or as a human being, why do I not have the right to decide whether I want to procreate or not? I mean, respecting religious sentiment, respecting all divides across the world, which may have a number of reasons to say that you shouldn't be aborting a life. I still do not understand, or I still am not able to decipher how can anybody, any religious group, any political group, any cultural group decide for me whether I want to procreate a life into the world or not. So I see this as just a very, very basic fundamental issue, and putting it in the constitution gives it that much importance as this issue deserves. It is my body. I have a right whether I want to procreate another human being. Nobody can decide for me whether I want to cut myself, or nobody can give me the.
We've all been welcoming it, but just and talking about how India's laws are progressive. But Flavia, Agnes, just before, final word on why in India we have our own issues of feticide, female feticide, and that is one of the reasons, abortions or finding out the sex of a child is not allowed in our country, because this abortion has been misused against, girl babies.
Yeah, we have this serious issue of sex-selective abortions. Finding out the sex of the child, and if it is a female, aborting that. and we have strict laws regarding that. So we have now today, you cannot disclose the sex of the child. You can have an abortion without knowing whether it's a male or female. But knowing it as it's a female fetus and then aborting it is against the law. So this has been a very big issue for women, for women's movement, because our sex ratio is going down. There are less women in our country than men. I think it's in cities it is far more. Richer places, it is more wealthy places. It's even more disparaging. So we need to have this clarity within us.
Absolutely. So that remains somewhere where we need to clearly work on. But thank you all. I'm completely out of time. Thank you so much all for joining us on the show to talk about, this move by France to give the fundamental rights to women to abortion, an extremely progressive step coming just ahead of International Women's Day.